Good day from Banjo Dunk Production Studio in Toronto, Canada. An audiobook podcast based on my book, My Good Times with Stompin' Tom. I'm your host, Duncan Fremlin from the band Whiskey Jack. Chapter 9. The First Stop is the Longest. It only took 3 hours on the first day of the tour for our patients to be tested. Tom's numerous treks across Canada have become legendary. Early in his career, he hitchhiked. Later, he rode in a truck, usually a Suburban. Come to think of it, I don't remember ever seeing Tom sitting in a car. A road journey with Tom was as much about a trip down memory lane as it was about the actual tour. Our first stop on day one was the Brockdan Hotel, a not very pleasant bar a few miles south of Sudbury on Highway 69. A few minutes earlier, Tom got on the walkie-talkie and announced, "Checkmate here." That's the handle he chose for himself. Said Tom, "We're stopping at the Brockdan, just up here on the right. I know a guy there who did me a favor a few years ago." So, all 3 vehicles in our convoy parked and the entire entourage, 7 of us, only 3 hours into the 3-month journey, waltzed in and settled down for what turned out to be a lengthy stay. Tom, as he was wont to do, had to have a beer, or 2, or 3, and after a couple of hours, looked like he had settled in for the evening. The band, in the early stages of severe boredom, was anxious to get to the first stop. The band, in the early stages of severe boredom, was anxious to get to the first stop, a modest motel on the outskirts of Sault Ste. Marie. We had visions of a nice meal and a fun evening, picking tunes, revisiting, or simply enjoying being on the road. We were pumped and anxious to get on stage with our new repertoire. We started pacing. None of us brave enough to suggest to Tom that we should get going. Don't want to arrive too late. So we find ourselves outside Sudbury, sitting in the dingiest of bars with a table of old tobacco-chewing, beer-swilling Tom fans, waiting and waiting and waiting some more. This was early July 1993, so the days were long. We finally resumed our journey across Highway 17 and arrived in Sault Ste. Marie just as the sun was going down. We all pulled up to the back your car up to the front door motel on Great Northern Road to settle in for the night. I spent a few minutes studying the bed sheets to see if they had been washed that week, and then the walkie-talkie came to life. Tom had spotted the mini-putt next door to the motel. It was lit up like an amusement park. He asked anyone who was listening, would someone walk over and ask the proprietor if Stompin' Tom can play a game? "Looks like they're closing, Tom. The lights are being turned out," someone replied. "Go over and ask. You never know." We learned there are rules for families who arrived a bit late and were denied entry because we're closing. And then there are rules for Stompin' Tom. It was quite a sight. It's etched in my brain forever. There's Tom, bent over, with a putter in one hand, trying to balance a beer with the other hand, a cigarette on the end of a long holder hanging out of his mouth. Sadly, this was before Instagram and no one thought to take a photo. It was the wee hours of the morning and many more beers and cigarettes later that Tom finally decided it was time to retire to his room with the band member who was assigned that night the task of staying up with him playing chess or cribbage or checkers or... Man, oh man. This was going to be a long tour.